All right, let's talk a little bit about carb needles and where they operate. Got two different needles here. Got a Dynojet. More than likely, it looks like a Dynojet needle with the adjustable, where you can adjust the height of the needle with the clip. Now, what this does, when you drop the clip down, it raises the needle up, which is going to make it richer. And conversely, you raise the clip up towards the top here, it's going to drop the needle down, which is going to make it leaner. Comparing those two needles, where this needle's thinner, where the taper goes down, it's a thinner taper. So basically think of it as thinner being richer, fatter being leaner, where it comes out. Now where this is going to take effect is part throttle, usually about a quarter to half throttle or quarter to three-quarter throttle maybe, in between where the idle circuits take off. And at pretty much anything up to a quarter and up to three-quarter throttle. The last quarter throttle is going to be all main jet. I mean, the circuits are all going to overlap, so you're pulling fuel everywhere out of all circuits, but the majority of it's going to just say out of the main jet at above three-quarter throttle or full throttle. The reason I mention this is I just watched a couple of videos where guys are taking these, guys are jetting these CV carbs, and instead of correcting where the needle position is, they'll just take the pilot jet out and drill it out, or put pretty much too big pilot jet in there, which is basically it's running too rich at the pilot jet. It's running too rich down low on the idle circuit, which doesn't really cure anything. It masks the problem, but doesn't fix it. It's like a cheap cover-up. Now, what you can do on a lot of these, you can get, if you buy these, you can buy these little shims here. They're fairly cheap, so you got a stock needle and you want to, I mean, this isn't a stock needle, but just say it was. You want to richen it up a little bit just off idle there. You stick your shim up under there, which is going to raise this stock needle up, or actually up, to richen it up some. When they designed these, I remember talking to a guy from Dynojet, Lawrence something, long time ago at a seminar Dynojet did, where what he does when he was designing jet kits, he would start off with a stock needle, whatever came in, just say a CBR 600 or R6 or Harley, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're all similar carbs, really. He would start off by taking a stock needle, running the bike with a wideband O2 sensor and monitoring rich and lean conditions, and then map that out, RPM versus throttle position, and see where it was actually lean at. And then he'd take a piece of stock like this or like something else, take it over to a little mini lathe and make some cuts on it along the body here to, lean it out or richen it up. You take some off the needle, richen it up, stick it back in the bike and run it and get it to an acceptable level, and then go back if you had to streamline it, depending on where it was, because you're going to have different RPM levels here, different loads. It's going to pull the slide up different places. So just say it was right here. That's just off idle, or just coming on where the needle's starting to rise up. So say it had a wicked lean spot right there. You basically cut it to, say, about right there maybe. That would cure that lean spot. And then if it had another lean spot in the mid-range further up, you go in there and say that little spot right there, and you thin that taper out to fatten it up there. And then once you get it to acceptable pretty much across the range, then you make it adjustable where you can change the clip up or down or add a shim to it. Now these shims, are equal to about half a clip. So if you had a position where it was almost acceptable but not quite, you could add an extra shim under there to raise it up some more, to get a little more gas. You always run a shim under the clip there, a shim, just so the clip isn't riding on the carb body, or not the carb body, the vacuum piston bore right there. And two, you can drill these holes out right here. I think Dyno recommends you drill that out with a, I don't remember, I want to say a 29 drill on this particular carb, which changes how quick the slide opens or lowers. How quick it opens. And then their spring is different too. So I got two springs here. They'll be different poundages. This one's a little bit stronger, so that's probably the stock one. So you use the weaker spring with the hole in there, which is going to lessen the resistance that it takes to raise the vacuum piston up, which makes the throttle come on a little bit sooner or quicker. You're basically changing the pressure differential is the same, but by lightening the load on this thing, it wants to raise quicker, which means it gives a little more throttle response. On these stock carbs, these stock springs, what I used to do was use a different needle, because you can get, you go through, and I can't remember which ones now, but the stock needles aren't adjustable. So they'd have a solid tip like this one here, like that one, not adjustable. But like I said, you could stick shims on there to raise it up. Now, what I used to do was take these stock springs, which this one is, and cut three coils off it. So 1, 2, 3. Cut 3 coils off of it and use it as like a cheapo homemade jet kit. And then change the main jets out to whatever, for whatever elevation, whatever bike I was using, with whatever pipes to do it with. Most of these, they have their recommendations. Majority of them take like it might come with a stock CV carb, might come with a 185 main jet, which is pretty fat for a main jet on these things. And you might end up running a 180, or then again, depending on the bike and the elevation and where you're at, you might end up running a 190 or a 200. You can't really, you can only tell by, a reputable dyno. Well, I say reputable, I mean reputable, not some guys just making runs, and a lot of those guys really don't have a clue what they're doing. They're just kind of throwing parts at it, guessing. And yeah, I say that because I've known quite a few dyno guys that are like that. They're not the sharpest tools in the shed. They think because they got a fancy piece of equipment, they know how to make horsepower. They don't. And the reason I say it is, a lot of guys, you can have a bike dynoed and they say, man, I got you 5 more horsepower. But they never actually rode the bike. They rode it on the dyno. And that's great, It might work, it might not. That being said, though, I've had people get their bike dyno tuned, and it pretty much makes it unrideable. It basically, on paper, it says, on the dyno, it says it makes more power. but the drivability suffers horribly. I've had guys where I've tuned the bike by riding it, take it and get a dyno run, and it'll pull a respectable number. But dyno guy goes, yeah, I can get you more power. So they'll get them more power. Maybe 2, maybe 3 more horsepower. But then you go ride the bike and it's slower because it doesn't accelerate the same. They didn't take into consideration whatever. Also, another thing I ran into where before he had a dyno, I don't have one now, but this is a long time ago. Before he had a dyno, I had a customer come in and I'd ridden the shit out of his bike. And he had no complaints about it. He took it someplace and he ran it on dyno, and dyno guys swore he could get him more power. So I asked him, I said, man, what'd they do to your bike? He said, I don't know, I left it there and they did it. So he gives me the dyno sheet, and I'm looking at it. And what they did, you know, the correction factor will be SAE, JIS, or the German one, DI, whatever. Is all they had done is switch from SAE to JIS, which they didn't really tune the bike. They changed the correction factor, which says it made more horsepower, without doing a damn thing to it, and charged them, you know, an extra 2 hours labor or whatever, just to click a button on the computer that says it made more horsepower. So that's that. Anyway, that's my rant. Actually, that's not all my rant about that. I've had customers before where they take it someplace and they get it dyno tuned and someplace, and then, you know, a few of them come back and they're like, man, I made a mistake. And I'm like, what's up, man? I had my bike dyno tuned and now it rides like crap. Do you know where you set everything? Yeah, I know. I got it written down in my log, which when I do a tuning log like that, I write down everything. Where I had the timing set to, where I had every jet set to, what air cleaner, temperature, everything in there. So when somebody did dick around with the timing or with the jetting or whatever, and I needed to fix it, I could go back and check it. And, you know, I had one, bike ran great. I mean, ran absolutely great. Had like a 157.5 main jet and a Mikuni 42, which is supposed to be really 2-lane, I guess, according to some people. But guy gets his bike back, and I mean, it's unrideable. You know, you got to pull off of a corner, and it won't pull at all. So I'm like, start pulling into the carburetor, and they changed the needle in there because I wrote down what needles I had in there for that particular carb, because Mikuni has like 3 or 4 different needles. Changed the needler back to where it was on the clip position it was supposed to be. Took it out and rode it, and it was better. Pulled the main jet. Main jet had like a 175 in there, totally too fat for that bike. Put that back. Last thing, check the timing. Timing weren't anywhere near where it was supposed to be. Now, timing, what I do on the in the gear case cover is I'll mark with the punch mark on the cover and a punch mark on the igniter or stator. That should line up. So this thing was about 4 degrees out. Checked all the settings on the dip switches, because he was running a Dyno 2000, I think. Dip switches are all set on number 4 curve, which is a totally retarded curve. So it brings the timing in extremely slow. And timing anywhere near where it's supposed to be. It takes from like 35 down to like 28, I think, 27, 28 degrees. way too retarded timing for that bike, or pretty much any bike, regardless of what the instructions say. You know, if you have this cam or this amount of modifications, the dip switches should be set on number 2, number 3, or number 4. In my experience with those things, and with most bikes, you want to run as much advance as quickly as possible on almost every bike. It just runs better. And you only want to start retarding the timing if you have problems, you know, with detonation on certain bikes. Certain times of the year or whatever, you can change the dip switch positions to where, you know, it retards the timing slightly, you know, maybe 2 or 3 degrees. And that's your staggered timing. So that's like your curve, not your overall timing. And that being said, you can run by moving the plate, advanced or retarded. You can change your overall timing. On several combinations, I found that in certain bikes, it made more power at about 32 degrees advance. That's on like a 82 or 80-inch big twin, which is really should be about 35 degrees advance to stock. But for this particular setup, they just made more power at 32 degrees. So something to consider. And I'm getting off topic with the timing here, but just trying to make a point. Just because the instructions say something, don't read too far into the instructions from the manufacturer. You know, even Dyno will tell you that, you know, with this combination, you should run the needle set on this position with this main jet and this pilot jet or idle air fuel screw setting. And that just isn't always the case. Typically what you want to do is, as far as your air fuel screw setting, you're gonna run an intermediate jet, pilot jet, whatever you want to call it, of just say most Harleys take a 45. Most of them take a 45 intermediate. I'd say 90%. Rule of thumb is, if you have to screw the air fuel screw in, should be in a range of 1 to 3 turns out from lightly seated. What you run into though is, you know, somebody will just say they'll put a 48 in there, which is what that guy did in that particular video. And it probably did run better, but he masked another area. So basically it's running too fat. And then for the air fuel screw, you know, you might be running that thing only a half or a quarter turn out with that 48 in there just to make it run halfway decent idle. General rule of thumb is 1 to 3 turns. So if it takes more than 3 turns out, you probably do need a bigger pilot jet. Conversely, if you have to screw the pilot jet in almost all the way to make it run decent, where it's not blowing black smoke out and washing the damn rings off, you probably need to go down a size on the pilot jet. Not probably, you do need to go down a size on the pilot jet. So this is all stuff to consider when you're tuning something, you know. And of course, this is old technology now, the carburetor and ignition timing. Well, ignition timing isn't old. This, you can still adjust that. It's just done by a computer now, which actually makes things quite a bit easier to understand anyway, in the grand scheme of things. But that's just a little crash course on carburetors there, at least on Harley CV carburetors, which the truth is, this CV carburetor ain't that much different from the CV carburetor on a scooter or on some big monster that's got 4 CV carburetors. So that's it for this. I don't make this thing too long. If you guys like my content, please like, share, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And everybody have a great weekend coming up. I think we're going to the HDR races down in Rockingham on Saturday, which of course they're calling for rain at some point during the day, but we're going anyway. So maybe it'll rain, maybe it won't. We'll find out when we get there. Eye surgery went good. Had to go back today for a checkup, post-op checkup. And doctor said everything's good, but I got to go back again in probably another 2 weeks or a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. I can't remember. My wife takes care of all that stuff. But so far I can see better. Still hurts though. Eye's still swollen. They cut the cataract out and replaced the lens in that eye. And I do see a lot better. I can actually look at the stuff fairly well without having to use my camera and zoom things out to the back so I can see them. But that's enough of that. You guys take care. Have a good weekend. Thank you.